Welcome to Recovery Comes Home Radio, your go-to podcast for all things related to addiction recovery. Whether you are an individual in recovery, a concerned loved one, or a dedicated professional, this podcast is tailored just for you. Here we are all about empowering you with the tools, insights, and inspiration you need to move forward. So grab your headphones, tune in, and let's embark on this transformative journey together. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to the Recovery Come Home Radio family. This is Adrienne Ticky, and I'm your host. Today, I'm so excited to announce this next guest. Holly McNeill graciously spoke to our Lodge family group a few weeks ago, and it just impacted our loved ones so much that I knew I had to have her on the podcast. She is a mindfulness architect, and anyone who knows anything about architecture, it's all about the scaffolding underneath, right? We all can use some support on choosing love and choosing mindfulness on the days where it's not so easy, where it's not the first emotion you might reach for. Holly created the Perla formula to bring happiness back to all of our lives. So without further ado, I introduce you to Holly McNeill. You want to tell us who you are and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, thank you, Adrienne. Thank you. I get those two names mixed up. Adrienne.
I answer to anything that's not derogatory. Don't worry.
Oh my gosh, there's two women I'm working with, and one's Andrea and one's Adrienne. So my apologies. Thank you so much for having me today. My name's Holly McNeill. I'm the mindfulness architect, and I actually am an architect. I've built hospitals nationally and internationally. I worked in the greater New York City area. I worked in San Francisco. I worked in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. But at age 34, I hit a really low point because, like you said, those foundations, that scaffolding, if it's not solid, we build our lives based on those faulty foundations. And at age 34, that all imploded for me at a really, really low point. So I made a vow to life, God, Buddha, the universe, anyone out there listening, help me and I will change. Give me another chance and I'll do better. And I was given that chance. So here we are.
You know, as you told that story, I'm reminded of, I took pottery for a while. And you have this lump of clay. And you have to get it absolutely centered on the wheel. If it's not centered, you can build the pot pretty high up.
Yeah.
But at age 34 or 35, it might start swinging out of control, right?
That's right. And that's where a lot of us can get when, many people don't show their faulty foundations. Many people, I had the perfect life, the perfect husband, that we were the right heights. We had 2 children, beautiful house, everything you're supposed to have. I was put in charge of a large, managing large projects early on. It looked like I had it together.
All the boxes were checked, right?
All the boxes were checked. And so it doesn't take much trauma to send us the wrong way. And so many of us deal with trauma in our formative years and our teenage years in school, and even, as we get older. And so that's why mindfulness is so important. On my journey to do better, spending, 20 years going across the country and from coast to coast, I found that moment to moment, non-judgmental awareness is where we can take a look back, take a deep breath, step back and look at what happened and respond to it with wisdom.
We always say mindfulness reminds me of what we say in recovery. Before you get into recovery, it's very often it's a thought, then an action. No break there, right? Thought, action. And recovery gives you that pause in the middle, which is kind of what we're talking about here with mindfulness. Being aware. I went to a John Cabot Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and they had us do walking meditation and eating meditation.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're doing things so slowly, right? But it's actually that you're present, constant attention is on what you're doing. And it kind of drowns the rest of everything else out.
It does. Without it, we're looking through the lens of the past. We're looking through whatever habit, whatever anger or whatever patterns we've created. But with that moment to moment awareness, it's kind of like you can separate yourself, your wisdom, your true nature, that part of you that was there at the beginning, and look at it with wisdom. And like you said, well, in recovery, which I don't know much about, you're the expert there, how it's cue and reaction. There's no pause. And that's exactly what a habit is. It's a cue, and then it's a behavior and a routine, and then a response. And when we're not paying attention, we do that over and over and over and over again. When we're not in the present moment, we're doing that automatically.
And guess what the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing, expecting different results.
That's right. So that's why that attention, growing that awareness, is so key in recovery, and any kind of self-realization, and any kind of working back to your personal freedom and power.
And we always talk about, it's really important to celebrate the big wins, but it's also equally as important to acknowledge the small changes along the way.
I think it's mostly all small changes.
Yeah.
Because 95% of our brain's activity of all these decisions and habits happen in our subconscious mind, where we're not even aware of it. And so when you make that vow, when I made that vow, I had no idea how to get to better, how to get to that freedom, but I believed it was possible. And every single day, I wish I would have written it down. Every single day, there was a teeny tiny miracle. It would be somebody walking by. I would hear something, a book I picked up. I had a question. The next thing I read was the answer. And it took time to unravel all that we've created without our awareness. But I think it's the little miracles every day that you can see and appreciate.
Yeah, and I think it switches our attention from perhaps thinking that life is happening to us into being a co-creator by meditating, and life is happening for us and with us.
Yeah. Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul said there's nothing more important for growth than to realize you're not the voice in your head, that you are the one that hears it. Yes. And so you're absolutely right, Adrienne. It is the mind, the brain is a tool that we as conscious beings, as part of this, a higher power, that we can use to create our lives, that we can choose with awareness to create from and create whatever we want, actually. But without it, that biocomputer is going on whatever programming that got shoved in there. And the subconscious mind doesn't ask any questions. It doesn't differentiate between positive and negative conditioning. It just goes.
And the other thing I'm thinking of is with meditation, meditation can be used for all kinds of things. Like when I first started meditating, I needed a guided meditation. I think that's good for some people to have something there in the background that they can, until the chatter stops a little bit, have some other part of guiding it. But I also used it. I grew up in a complicated family, like all of us, right?
Like many of us, yes.
I struggled to get on camera, big time.
Well, you're doing very well now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of work. I mean, I put like 2 years of work into recording myself, watching myself, because I just, the thought of going on camera made me want to vomit. And I knew that unless I got over this, I couldn't get this message out to the world. So what I did was, on my iPad, I was playing ocean music. And on my phone, I was using the voice recorder to record a meditation that I had done for myself, surrounding myself with all the people that I love that are no longer here. And in doing so, I listened to that every night, and until I started liking my voice.
Wow. Yeah, and it's often a pattern that we don't like ourselves, that we don't like certain parts
Yeah.
about ourselves. When we're children and people, and our parents say, "Don't good girls don't behave that way, good boys don't do that." We take those parts of ourselves and shove them away, and it's really not the truth,
It's not the
right?
truth.
Right, it's not the truth. So in listening to that, and telling yourself, and become and listening with compassion and kindness, you change that habit.
Well, and I think a lot of people come to us um, hearing a lot of that programming from, mostly it's their families.
Yeah.
And they come to us, the families the moms and dads have been waiting for the phone to ring to hear if their child is dead or in the hospital or back in jail or worse. And it doesn't start out in the ideal spot for meditation, you
No.
know? I think that's important to bring up here, is that really it's important to work on a practice to get yourself still.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
talk about that for a minute? When
And
we've
that
got, residents and listeners who it's very hard for them to stop and not have an ADHD brain.
right. And there are many paths in meditation, as you said. But in Perla, for example, we start with 1 minute 6 times a day.
Okay.
Just
You
one
can do
minute six.
that.
You can
Yeah.
do that. And we're not trying to change the brain. The Tibetan word for meditation, gom, means to become familiar with.
Okay.
That's all. That's all we're doing. That's what meditation is. We are becoming familiar with. So you can accept whatever you can. You don't have to worry if you have ADHD or if you're in a bad place. If you can commit to 1 minute 6 times a day to just pay attention. You're not judging your thoughts. You're not trying to push them away. You're just learning to pay attention. And then you're on your way, because you can start to, I tell people to sit back in their easy chair. Think of it like the thoughts, emotions,
Yeah.
and feelings highway with all the chaos and horn honking. You want to be on your easy chair next to the highway, watching it all go by.
Like a
And that
show.
practice, yeah, and separating yourself, your true nature, from all that static. And in doing that, if you do it enough, if I tell people that if there's only one thing you take away, is if you want to create a new habit, you must do it over and over and over and over again. In doing that 1 minute 6 times a day, just that act alone, you're going to feel some peace if you do it enough.
And I think that it would also connect them to their own voice that they've been kind of divorced from for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They've silenced their voice by escape. Now they have a voice, but they don't know what to do with it.
Right. So if you
It's
can,
about what you say to yourself too, right?
it is all that negative self-talk. But if you can put it, put it on that highway, just kind of watch it. We want to become the observer. We want to watch it. Then there's space for that wisdom and peace and your own clarity, your own wisdom to come through. And that's how the brain works, and that's how it works. And then, and once you've created that habit of watching the mind, you can start to choose what parts of the highway, what cars you want to get into, and which ones you want to let go down the road. But a lot of times, there's these cars, if we're using that analogy, have been there a long time, and
A
they're
long
loud and they're
time.
noisy and they're enticing, and it's easy to jump in. And so it takes
Hey,
time
just because
to.
it's an old car doesn't mean it's a good one.
That's right. That's right. And it takes time to say no. And you can say no from your easy chair. You can say no. You can rewire, and literally you're rewiring your brain when you do
Right.
that.
And that's an important point that I want to drive home to our listeners. In the olden days, it was like, no, I'm just born this way and this is the way I am. I'm going to die this way. And
That's
today
right.
we know different. We know that we can not, there's people that have lost whole halves of their brain and the other half has taken over the
That's right.
function.
That's right.
Our body is an amazing tool, as evidenced by our listeners. It can take a lot of damage and keep on ticking.
Mm-hmm. That's
But
true.
I
That's true.
think the biggest thing, the biggest organ that needs to be worked on is right here.
Yeah. Today's science is catching up with millennial old wisdom and modern day thought leaders. Today's science is realizing the personality is much more malleable than we thought, because personality traits are made of thoughts, emotions, feelings, and behaviors, all of which we in our easy chair have control on how we respond to it. Now, at first, all this stuff is going to come up. The highway is going to be there because we've programmed it that way. We've reinforced it. But to recognize that at your core, you are not broken. You are not all of these things. That you have a choice on how you respond to all of these things, and you do it in the present moment without judgment. And so it's a practice like everything else, but it's like an ocean liner, and we've gone from a highway to an ocean liner, and you're wanting to turn it in the other direction. And it takes time and it takes attention, but it is doable, and it's totally worth it. It's doable for anyone. The only requirement is your humanity, your ability to think, your ability to respond.
And what role would you say that discipline plays in this?
Without consistency, our brain, the amygdala, the fear center of the brain is
the
designed,
reptilian part that we always talk about, the lizard brain that says fight, flight, or freeze.
That's right. It's designed to protect its programming the days back when safety was more of a concern. And so you're going to meet with resistance. Your brain is going to throw up roadblocks to say, this is stupid, this will never work. Who are you to think that you can change? So the discipline is to expect that resistance, to understand that resistance, and to stick with it. It's like, if you think about it, it's like a cow path, right? When the cows have gone the same way and the grass is all completely gone, it's easy to go that way. And you want to start a new one. And it's hard to at first. It's easier to go this way. But the discipline is knowing that you can create the new cow path is a bad word, but new neural connections in your brain. And at first they're going to be teeny tiny, because they're new. And the other ones are going to be huge and monstrous because they've been there around.
They've been reinforced.
But you can switch that. If nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together.
That's right.
So if you let those things go down the highway, they start to break apart, and your new ones. And you can use tools like compassion and gratitude to help you with that. But it is about meeting that resistance and staying and sticking with it. It's all about consistency. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it does require your attention. I can talk to people that in the moment, and they can understand exactly what I'm talking about. They might listen to this podcast and understand exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
But if they don't listen to this podcast 3 times or 8 times or 21 times, the next day, those neural connections are going to be gone, and they're going to be right back where they were. So anything for those of you out listening, anything that makes sense to you and it's new to you, you must listen to over and over and over. Jon Kabat-Zinn, 10 years into my 20-year journey, I got a CD from a wonderful therapist I had. And unfortunately, I had 600 miles between Rapid City, South Dakota and Minneapolis, Minnesota, to listen to it over and over and over and over again. And there were so many wonderful things in it that I learned so much from, that changed my life. There's a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh, I love it, with Marlee Matlin.
Yes, came out in 2004. If you listen to it once, it's great, but I've watched it over and over, and that's what you need to do. And that's actually an easy way to create some new pathways. You don't have to do it on your own. Find something, a CD or that movie, and watch it over and over and over again, because you will catch things new each time. And it will become more of a pattern and an understanding in your brain that will stick, that won't disappear the next day. And that part of the discipline is critical.
I think in the beginning, it can feel like you're forcing things, right? A lot of people, I've heard that feedback from, like, affirmations and whatnot, that you feel like maybe you're saying things that you don't really believe yet.
Yeah, you don't have to believe it.
Come along.
Oh yeah. The biggest thing to know is you don't even have to believe this stuff when it first comes out, because your brain will fight it. your brain will tell you not to believe it because that's not what the program says you're supposed to believe.
Yeah.
So you should expect that it'll be difficult at first, that you won't believe it at first. I remember being on the treadmill, I am worthy, I am lovable, I am worthy, I am lovable, over and over and over again. I didn't believe it, but then your brain, there's like, okay, she's been saying this for 14 weeks or whatever. And your brain's like, okay. Right. And it creates these new patterns. And all of a sudden, it becomes second nature. I am worthy, I am lovable. So you're absolutely right. You're going to meet with that resistance. You're going to think it's not going to work, that it's not true. But again, that's where the discipline comes in. You don't have to know, you don't have to believe it. You just have to do it. You just have to say it.
Kind of like the program, it's we talk about the second step says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Mm-hmm. And we always say first it's come, then come to, right? You need to get yourself to whatever place you need to be, whether it's in a meeting or a sitting meditation. Then you need to wake up to what's around you, and then you need to come to believe. So the belief doesn't come until later.
It doesn't, and it does not, and it can't. The brain doesn't work that way.
The brain doesn't work that way.
That's right. And so if you expect yourself, all of a sudden you've been telling yourself, maybe subconsciously for decades, that you are, worthless, that nobody loves you, and and then you do like 3 affirmations saying I am lovable. Like, no, you're not. That's not what we've been talking about here.
No, and that's a good point, is it needs a lot of repetition. When people first get to us, they feel way less than lovable. They have done things that they have a hard time accepting, and that's a big part of the program, is accepting what you've done and being able to make amends to people and not say, I'm sorry for the 1100th time. Right. But actually say, what can I do to make this relationship right? Well, how can we move forward here? And I think the meditation is key because it helps calm down that monkey mind.
Yes, the monkey mind. That's right. It does. When you can
go into a place where, first of all, which voice is mine in there?
Right.
There's all these voices out there that I hear, like you were talking about the cars honking, and whose voice am I listening to? Am I listening to my mother's? Am I listening to my teachers? Am I listening to that girl that told me I couldn't sit at the lunch table because I didn't have the right Jordache jeans on?
Probably. Yeah.
Listening to, and what am I saying to myself? I study a lot of neuro-linguistic programming, and what we say to ourselves is so important. And when you're dealing with meditation, you're tapping into that subconscious. And I think it's so doubly important when you're talking to your subconscious. Be easy with yourself. Tell yourself you love yourself.
That's right. That's where
I might not have always been here for you, but I'm here now.
That's right. That's where the tools of compassion and gratitude and understanding for your situation, patient acceptance. Here's what I've done. Here's, expecting it not to be anything less than what it is. And you're exactly right about that voice. I teach in my classes about the awareness camp and the enmeshment camp. Most of our lives, we live in the enmeshment camp, the monkey mind, right? That takes, we can be having a nice day and boom, we think of something and we're in it. We're stuck in it. We can't see.
And it's ruined our day, right?
That's right. And we can't see anything else. It's truth. It's how it is. It's who I am. And we can't see a thing. Meditation helps you grow your awareness camp, that space around it, so you can see all of this from a distance. When you become familiar with what is there as the observer, you're looking at it as the observer. So you start to, the more time you can spend in meditation with that awareness, growing that space, sitting on that easy chair, kind of creating that space, the next time that comes up, you may have a little more distance between yourself and all that all that you get enmeshed in. And eventually you're going to be able to say, no, this is just what's coming up. So
do you think that meditation has the ability I just am thinking about our residents, and they can't sit still and feel like, let's just say, when do you see some positive results happening? Is it immediate? Is it a few weeks down the road of that discipline of having the practice every day?
It takes on average 21 days, they say, to make a habit,
Sure.
but 66 days to make it second nature. So at first, you're going to need a lot of compassion and understanding, and you're going to have to believe. You're going to have to go with blind faith, because at first, it's not going to turn around overnight.
Right.
Growing that awareness and becoming familiar, but that's where where that self-support, that even if you don't believe it, right? I love you. I'm here for you. I haven't always been here for you. We're going to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the biggest things that can help people stay consistent is, otherwise, I'm never going to move away from where I am. We feel stuck and lost. And without creating that space, without kind of growing your awareness, that's where you're going to stay. But just
Yeah.
knowing that absolutely everyone has this capacity, no matter how jumpy you are, no matter how, ADHD or whatever it is that you have, everyone has this capacity to soothe and to give compassion. And, again, just start slowly. It's something that takes time, because you're literally, again, rewiring a computer that's been wired for decades without any awareness. So
Yeah. So the word that comes to mind as we start to end our time here is grace.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Giving
Right.
yourself the grace to start where you are and
Mm-hmm.
know that it can only improve from here.
That's right. That's right. With this practice, it works. It's not any. What I love about the Perla practices, two things. One is, I'm not making any of this up, and this is just that's how the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, people have their programs where they come up with the 5 this or the 6 that. I have teachers and gurus to back this all up, but it's spirituality, Christianity, Buddhism, now psychology and neuroscience that is backing this all up, and they're all
Yeah,
pointing back to a few simple truths. And the most important of that truth is that we are not our thoughts, emotions, and feelings.
that's
We are
right.
not those habits and patterns and defaults. We are so much more.
You
Right?
might have
We
made
just
a bad choice, but you're not a
right.
bad person.
That's right. That's absolutely right. At our core, we are all that infinite wisdom, unconditional love, universal
Absolutely.
compassion that we came from. That is that we're a ball of light radiating in every direction. And we have to become familiar. We're not broken, right? And through meditation,
That's right.
like I said, that word go means you can become familiar with what is already there.
We might
And
be
when you
bent a little bit, but we're not broken.
That's right. That's right. When you start to see through that thoughts, emotions, and feelings highway, this amazing space of clarity and peace appears, which is, your true nature, that connection we all have back to source or God or life. Beautiful.
So
And it's
tell me,
available.
Holly, if you could have gone back in time, this is the
Mhm.
last question that I always ask everybody.
Okay.
Roll your tape back to where it all imploded.
Hmm.
What would you, Holly, now say to Holly back then to either make your journey easier, lessen the time that you had to spend learning the lessons that you had to learn, or any kind of what would you have said to Holly back then?
It's interesting because it did implode at 34, but I talk about, these this long black bag that we stuffed parts of ourselves in at an very early age. And I can take it back to a time when I was 10 years old, one day when I thought I was unlovable, unworthy, shameful and disgusting. And that's what I built on. That's what I built my foundations on. I would go back to that time when I was 10 years old and just explain that this is not you. This is not who you are. You are lovable. I would hug her and tell her that I love her and that she's lovable, and that what happened to you is not your fault, and that you are so much more. because that pivot very early on can send us on the wrong way pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because a lot of our residents have trouble with all of that. They just feel like there's a tsunami of things that are coming at them. And I think they've got everybody else's voices in their head, like we already talked about. And if they can just 6 times a day for 1 minute to start out.
That's right.
Quiet your mind and just notice what comes up for you. Yeah. You don't have to, there's no preconceived ideas here. There's no wrong answers.
Yeah, actually, you can be curious. You can be curious. Yeah. Non-judgmental, with compassion and curiosity. What is going on in there?
What's going on in there? Who's in
what
there?
What am I creating from? Right. What am I creating from? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has just been great information for our audience. I know that, anytime that you start something as serious as recovery, you have to have those healthy coping mechanisms to reach for, to replace those unhealthy escape mechanisms that you used to use. So I think you've given us some great information and some great techniques to work on. I can't wait to have you back on the show, Holly, and I really appreciate all of your wisdom, and thanks for being with us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you for having me. And yeah, anytime. I'd love to be back.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for tuning in to Recovery Comes Home Radio. We hope that today's episode has provided you with valuable information and insights on the recovery process. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Keep seeking support, practicing self-care, and moving forward one step at a time. Until next time, stay strong, stay resilient, and stay humble. Hope lives here.